7 days of glory, 7 days of power, 7 days of the presence of the Holy Ghost, 7 days of breaking generational altars. The Prayer Hub Global presents the 7 altars, 7 days of fasting and prayer.
Even in the heavens there was war. What makes you think because you are pretty, every man will come knocking at your father's door to ask for your hand in marriage? Sister, there is war. What makes you think because you don't drink and smoke, everything about your life will be okay? My brother, there is war. What makes you think because you can preach, your church will be full? There is war. Anybody trying to abuse you and use you, I pray them out of your life.
Starting from the 13th to the 19th of June, 7 to 9 p.m. each night. Happening live at the Prayer Hub Global Auditorium off the Taifa Junction Road, Spot M Sawmill. The 7 altars.
When we are talking about riches, there is a tendency for you to forget. Many of you are looking for human connections, but the Lord said, remember, salary is not what makes you rich. He said, I give you power. It means that there is power behind riches. There is power behind wealth. And tonight, I hold on to the horns of the altar and I declare, may that power enter your life. I said, may that power enter your life.
The 7 altars, 13th to the 19th of June, 7 to 9 p.m. each night. 7 days of glory, 7 days of power, 7 days of the presence of the Holy Ghost, 7 days of breaking generational altars. The Prayer Hub Global presents the 7 altars, 7 days of fasting and prayer.
Even in the heavens there was war. What makes you think because you are pretty, every man will come knocking at your father's door to ask for your hand in marriage? Sister, there is war. What makes you think because you don't drink and smoke, everything about your life will be okay? My brother, there is war. What makes you think because you can preach, your church will be full? There is war. Anybody trying to abuse you and use you, I pray them out of your life.
Starting from the 13th to the 19th of June, 7 to 9 p.m. each night. Happening live at the Prayer Hub Global Auditorium off the Taifa Junction Road, Spot M Sawmill. The 7 altars.
Hi, I'd like to welcome you to the maiden edition of Conversations from the Deep, brought to you by the Prayer Hub Global. Today, I'm here with the lead pastor of the Prayer Hub Global, Pastor Alexander Amankwah. Hello, man of God.
Oh, thank you. I'm more than glad to be on this platform. It's always an honor when God gives us the privilege, especially for us to interact in a more sober, reflective manner.
Yes, I was coming to that. Now, one thing that struck me is when I look at your videos,
yes,
you are very vocal, very hot. But today, before we started, you've been calm and all that. I'm very surprised. What's the difference here?
Somebody will say when we get in that zone, there's an enabling force that takes away the shyness, the boldness of the Spirit comes upon you. The tenacity of the revelation God is oozing through you to the people. They all influence your presentation. But I don't walk around my house talk to my wife or anybody or the same frequency. Yes. So this is naturally me, undiluted.
Yeah. Wow, that's nice. Yeah. So first of all, we've been seeing your videos all over social media, making waves here and there. Where have you been all this while? Why did it take this long for us to have such a powerful man of God preaching and his messages all over?
First and foremost, we thank God for grace that even people recognize the fact that we have something to share. Because all across, the social media landscape, there's a lot of content produced virtually every minute.
Yes.
So for God to have given us that leverage, people paying attention to what we are sharing, I believe is by the grace of God. For where I have been, I've been around, studying under the fathers, preparing for this season and this moment. And I believe God has given us the opportunity to now sort of bring the city on the hill. So we are not hidden anymore, and people can also appreciate what God is doing through us. So we've been learning, we've been building mileage, we've been building capacity, and we believe that now God is giving us the leverage for people to also see what He's doing with us, basically.
So to take from your own words,
yes, sir.
You said preparing for this moment. And in this moment, it's all about the 7 altars.
Yes, sir.
The 7 altars.
Yes, sir.
So before we begin, the topic of altars is a topic that most Christian programs are about. Every day they are talking about altars, altars this, altars that. So it's something Christians are already used to or they've heard about. But then I want us to start. Why are we discussing altars? And the first question I'd like to ask you is, what is an altar? Let's go back to the basics.
Back to the basics.
Yes.
Thank you very much for that question. Like you rightly said, the word altar is not something that is rare in the Christian circles. It's lack of a better word, it's very ubiquitous. Everybody seems to, know or have heard about it. And like you said, there are 1,001 programs that are organized all over year round.
Yes.
Concerning an altar.
Yes.
It's a good question because there are those who have that belief that the conceptualization of what an altar is does not belong to the New Testament, fold.
Okay.
First and foremost, the concept of an altar in its architecture, in its function, is not man-made. Okay. That should be clearly stated.
Okay.
It is not a man-made, manufactured idea. It is within the very existence of God Himself.
Okay.
It's within the framework of heaven. If you read Revelations 8, that's one of the places where the Bible said there was silence in heaven.
Yes.
Right after that, an angel is operating on the altar in heaven.
Okay.
So the concept of an altar was not originated by Noah, was not originated by Abraham. It's a concept which was within the framework of the eternities.
Okay.
That even angels operate from that sphere. So it is a spiritual technology that you will find not only peculiar to the Christian faith. There are other, belief systems who all believe in the concept of an altar.
Yes.
As to what an altar is, I will not say that there is a definitive, terminology to really describe, but all the descriptions are in its function.
Okay.
An altar is a place of sacrifice because the Hebrew word for an altar simply means a place of slaughter. The Greek word for an altar also means a place of sacrifice. So the central idea of what an altar is that it connotes sacrifice. It's a place of communion. It's a place of communication.
Okay.
It's a place of exchange.
Okay.
But to make it more easier, an altar is simply a portal that connects a deity to its worshippers.
A portal
that
connects
a gateway.
A deity to its worshippers.
A doorway, a gateway. Okay. So, first and foremost, an altar is not man-made. It's within the patterns of heaven.
Okay.
And through divine providence, God, through the agency of revelation, brought it to some of the patriarchs as to how somebody like Noah knew he had to build an altar. We are not told by the Bible, but he knew exactly what it was, and he did it. If you check your Bible carefully, Adam's sons, Cain and Abel, went to offer sacrifices before God. Definitely they can't offer sacrifices without an altar, even though it is not explicitly mentioned that there was an altar, but sacrifices were there. They probably didn't have Genesis to Revelation to tell them there's an altar. But within the framework of divine knowing, they knew that for exchange, communication, communion between a deity and its worshippers, you needed a certain structure of demarcation specifically designed for that purpose, sanctified and separated for that particular purpose. So for that reason, number one, an altar is God's design, is God's pattern, because we find it in Revelations 8, 1-5. We also find it in Amos, where Amos saw a vision in Amos chapter number 9, verse number 1. He said, I saw the Lord standing by the altar. So within the framework of the visions that people were privileged to have seen, they saw altars within the dimensions of God. So it's beyond human manufacturing.
Okay. So one of the first things you said was the altar signifies sacrifice.
Yes, sir.
Signifies communion.
Yes, sir.
Okay. But then we know Jesus Christ also signifies sacrifice made for us. And Jesus Christ, one of the things we usually do in remembrance is this communion. So if Jesus Christ signifies those things, then I'd like to ask, what is the spiritual significance of an altar to a Christian in this current date?
Let me throw our conversation a bit off balance.
Okay.
If you look through the Bible carefully with prophetic and spiritual intuition,
okay,
I can boldly say to our viewers that the first altar on this earth was built by God.
Wow.
And the first altar God built was Adam.
Please enlighten us.
The first altar God built was Adam.
Okay.
Now, to juxtapose with what you said about Jesus.
Yes.
I was waiting probably to explain it in church, but since you brought it out here, why not? We can just...
people who watch Conversations from the Deep get a glimpse into what's about it.
Exactly the point, a glimpse. Because you rightly mentioned that Jesus seems to signify all.
Yes.
Because if you check the definitions we tried giving to what an altar is.
Yes.
We talked about exchange, communication, gateway, doorway. So you notice Genesis 1:26, God said, let us make man in our own image after our likeness, let him have dominion. In Genesis 2:7, God formed man out of the dust of the earth. Now, that formation becomes a structure.
Okay.
A structure through which communion will be made.
Okay.
So the sacrifice God had to give to the altar was to give His Spirit.
Wow.
So the Spirit of God was the sacrifice on the altar.
Okay.
So when the Spirit of God went into the altar became alive. It became a soul.
Okay.
So the first dimension I believe that we all have to understand is that Adam goes beyond a humanoid manufacturing. No. Adam was actually an altar God built for himself. So you notice that when the altar was defiled, it affected creation.
Yes.
Because within God's temple, the altar He created for His temple was Adam. Through Adam, I mentioned gateway.
Yes.
Through Adam, communication, fellowship, exchange. God will come in the cool of the day to exchange, to fellowship.
Yes.
When that altar was defiled by putting the wrong fruit on the altar, which was the tree of the knowledge of good and evil, the altar was defiled. Okay. And when the altar was defiled, God had to send the altar out.
Wow.
So Adam actually, in his full function, was the first altar ever made on earth.
Amen.
And if you bring it within the framework, let me chip this in.
Okay.
In Exodus, all right, in Exodus 20, verse 24, 25, Moses actually was told by God to build the temple according to the pattern that was shown on him on the mount.
Yes.
It means that the tabernacle in the wilderness represents, let's say, a selfie.
Okay.
All right.
Wow.
To make it more easier, it's like when God took Moses into his realm, Moses took a selfie. Now, when he took a selfie, he came back on earth. Maybe the material composition that he saw in heaven is not found on earth. So he had to use certain, materials like wood, like stone, and all that to sort of enact or recreate
what he saw in heaven.
Okay. Now, Moses was therefore commanded by God to build an altar.
Yes.
Now, the first thing he talks about in Exodus 20, 24, 25, God said, and build me an altar out of the earth.
Okay.
Out of the earth.
Yes.
So the structure there is, it is made out of the earth. That's why I said Adam was the first altar.
Wow.
All right?
Yes.
If you read further, he says, if you build the altar with stone. Now, let's quickly run to the New Testament, right?
Okay.
Jesus asked the disciples, who do men say that I am? Quickly, Peter answers. Not quickly, but Peter answers anyways. And he says, thou art the Christ, the Son of the living God. Then Jesus said, thou art Petros, which is rock. Then he said, upon this rock. So technically speaking, the rock Jesus referred to as a human being was actually the altar on which the church will be built.
Okay.
So man is earth, man is rock. And these are the two components that God commissioned Moses to build the altar with. These are shadows. When the real thing came, Peter is an altar. So it's not necessarily the name. The revelation has to have a stone.
Stone.
And in olden times, when they wanted to keep a memory in something, they kept it on a stone because it can withstand every weather.
Okay.
All right?
Yes.
When Jacob too arose from his vision, the Bible said he picked the stone he was lying on and poured oil. That was also an altar. So the material composition of an altar, either earth or stone,
yes,
are all representative of men.
Okay. Then I would like to ask, if Adam was the first altar, then as men, why were people still raising altars, or why do we still raise if we are already in essence altars?
Because the altar was mad. So now the altar will need mirror versions.
Okay.
To sort of look on, to reflect.
Okay.
So the man offering the sacrifice on a physical altar is going to reflect what the altar represents. So if you are worshiping Baal on an altar, your destiny, your programming, your thought patterns, your mindset will reflect that of Baal.
Yes.
Right?
Yes.
So if you are offering to the Most High God, he that dwells between the cherubs, as we behold that particular thing, we become.
Yes.
So, like I said, the altar is the gateway. There's exchange between the deity and the worshipper. So eventually, the deity will become the worshipper, and the worshipper will become the deity. They'll become inseparable.
Okay.
But it is through the agency and the function of the altar to sort of amalgamate the two entities as one.
It's been just 3 questions, and already there's so much. I am looking forward to 13th to 19th of June.
It's going to be awesome.
Man of God, that leads me to my next question. 13th to 19th.
Yes, sir.
Why do we need 7 days to discuss what an altar is?
Like you rightly said, I mean, I believe right now our viewers probably will be asking a lot of questions on even the angles from which we are coming from.
Yes.
I've just made a very wild,
that man is an altar.
Man is an altar.
Wow.
Why, if man is not an altar, why would the Bible say present your bodies as living sacrifices. Holy and acceptable unto God? Because you are an altar.
Wow. That's an angle I had never looked at it from.
Exactly the point. So we need 7 days. But the 7 altars actually was inspired by the story of Numbers 23.
Okay.
In Numbers 23, a prophet is mentioned, right? And strangely, sometimes we scale over some of these things in the Bible. Now, the prophet was not an Israelite.
No.
Right? He was not an Israelite. He was actually hired by the king of Moab. And the Moabites are cousins. Yeah, cousins you will call them to the Israelites, because the Moabites are the sons of Lot and his incest with the daughters.
Yeah.
They became the Ammonites and the Moabites. Okay. According to Bible scholars, they believe that actually Balaam the prophet was actually an Ammonite.
Okay.
That is why the Moabites knew him. So the whole concept,
perhaps that's why he had an idea of what to do.
Most definitely. Yes. I mean, they all had that influence from Abraham to Lot, from Lot to the daughters to the sons. Yeah. So you notice that when they went to seek his services, God spoke to him.
Yes.
So God had been speaking to this guy, but he's not part of the Israeli setup, you would call.
Yes.
But these prophets, like the father-in-law of Moses, who was a priest in Midian, was also a priest of God. As to how these things work, my brother, we do not know. We do not want to speculate. But if we are working by what the Bible has presented to us, we come to the point of knowing that this was a prophet that God spoke to. In the first instance, God told him not to go. Because he said he cannot curse those he's blessed. Now, the prophet, through the seduction of money, was still insistent. Then God said, just move. Now, on his way, an angel appeared with a sword that he, the prophet, could not see, but the prophetic donkey. I think the donkey had fraternized with the atmosphere of the prophetic. So even the donkey could see the angel, whilst the prophet could not see. Now, he struck the donkey many times. Why would you not move? He said, the donkey spoke. There's an angel with a sword. He's going to kill you. And the prophet was not scared when the angel, the donkey yes, spoke. He replied, you sat on me for many times, but I've never acted this way. Now, when the prophet saw the angel, he knew God's intention was to finish him before he gets to the job. Fast forward. When he gets to meet the king Barak, the first thing he tells the king is, erect 7 altars. 7 altars. And he said, bring 7 rams, 7 bullocks. Then he said, I will go to meet the Lord. If you read that account, the Lord too met him.
The Lord met him.
So he was able to access the divine dimension of God by knowing exactly what to do. And when he got there, he knew the situation demanded 7 altars. And he commissioned 7 altars. And God appeared. And God spoke. That is what inspired us to bring out something of that nature. That through the 7 days, as we go through the 7 altars, we believe that the ones that are blessed can never be cursed. Of all the 7 altars he erected, he could not curse them. It means that the 7 altars literally became a wall instead of a weapon against them. So the 7 altars is whatever has been initiated to cause harm will rather be a dividends to bless. It will be a channel to empower. What is supposed to eat the world will rather give us strength. What is supposed to bring us down will empower us. What is supposed to arrest us will release us. So the 7 altars was actually intended for evil, but in the domain of the 7, because if you do a little bit of hieroglyphic studies of the Hebrew alphabets, which are also numbers, the number 7, which is Zion, actually is a weapon. That is why many times when God wanted to release people from the walls of Jericho, he says, move around the 6 on the 7-day shout. Because in the 7th dimension of the numerology of Jewish theology, the number 7 is also a sign of a weapon. So when things are engaged in the numbers of 7, you are actually dealing with warfare.
Man of God, that's so much information in so little time. So we would like to sign off. But then I would like to ask you, if you could give us maybe 2 or 3 or a few things that people should expect when they come for the 7 Altars program.
I mean, God is ready to open our eyes. He said, open down my eyes that I may behold the wondrous works in thy law. From this little conversation, I believe we've touched certain areas that are, I wouldn't say that are new, but there are perspectives people have never looked at. Different perspective. So we are dealing with the spirituality of what an altar is, the essence of it, within the shadows it presents. Yes, within the shadows.
So, ladies and gentlemen, it's been an awesome time on Conversations from the Deep. It's been about the 7 Altars program happening from the 13th to the 19th of June at the Prayer Hub Global, Spot M of Amankwah. I'd like to invite you because even in this short time, the things we've shared, I'm excited. I want to know what is going to happen. So remember, when you're coming, come with a friend, tell that friend to bring a friend, and join us for the next edition of Conversations from the Deep. Have a good day.
7 days of glory, 7 days of power, 7 days of the presence of the Holy Ghost, 7 days of breaking generational altars. The Prayer Hub Global presents the 7 altars, 7 days of fasting and prayer.
Even in the heavens there was war. What makes you think because you are pretty, every man will come knocking at your father's door to ask for your hand in marriage? Sister, there is war. What makes you think because you don't drink and smoke, everything about your life will be okay? My brother, there is war. What makes you think because you can preach, your church will be full? There is war. Anybody trying to abuse you and use you, I pray them out of your life.
Starting from the 13th to the 19th of June, 7 to 9 p.m. each night. Happening live at the Prayer Hub Global Auditorium off the Taifa Junction Road, Spot M Sawmill. The 7 altars.